Welcome to Exposing Deathcare. Our guest C is here today. How's it going?
It's going all right. How are you?
I like to say I am fair to moderate.
I like that. I like that a
Thank you.
lot.
Thanks so much. So, what is your role into deathcare?
I was a funeral counselor for about 4 years. Then I was moved up to a office manager for about a year, and then I was an intern embalmer for a little bit. That was my last.
How long have you been out?
I've been out since December of 2023.
So you went through COVID.
I went through COVID. Yes,
How many years total did you spend in deathcare?
about 6 years.
With your jobs, something that I've heard continuously from people that I've talked to is that they were just thrown into it with very minimal training. What was your training experience like?
I would agree. That's the same thing that happened to me. I went in and I asked to see if I can get my toes wet. I wanted to see how death care was like, put my foot in the door, and I was hired that weekend and I started on Monday. And the first thing that they had me do was dress a newborn baby in like the first 5 minutes of me walking in. And after that, I was just like, see, do this and do that. And I just had to learn on the job for like the first month. I was just drowning, but I had to be on my toes and figure it out.
Did you ever get sent on a removal by yourself where it was definitely a situation where you needed more than one person?
Thankfully, no. The first funeral home I worked for was very, very good at that, where we always went in pairs no matter where we went. But I have been thrown into services by myself with 200 plus guests where I knew nothing about the family and I just had to figure it out.
Were you like also having to be in charge of the music and making sure like you pressed play at the right time or anything like that?
Yes, all of the above and trying to figure it out and running back and flowers, running flowers at the same time. I was like, "Oh my goodness, like how am I going to do
Uh,
this?"
yeah, I've
But
been there. It's not fun, but when you get done with it, you're like,
yeah, you high five yourself, you eat your lunch and your pizza, you feel smug.
you might get to eat your lunch. We know how
Exactly.
it is. Oh, mercy. What was the pay like while you were working in the funeral industry?
In the beginning, I only made 12.50 an hour. Then I went to 13. In the height of the pandemic, I was making 15. And I made a comment to my boss one day when we were drowning that I said, you know what, I should quit and go work at Taco Bell because they were making 17. And she bumped up my pay to 18. And then I ended up making, I think, 21.50 at this last funeral home.
So that was over a span of 6 years. So, what are some stories that you want people to think on and resonate with? Some experiences that you have that maybe weren't so great?
Um, I
No,
think the
fire
number
away.
well, the number one thing that I really, really did not like about, especially when I walked in, was that it was the older embalmers that were very, very, I don't know, that they didn't think I had the gumption to do anything like they do. I walked into the prep room and I was dressing people or so. And I remember telling my boss, who was a woman, by the way, um, I really want to embalm one day. I really want to. I want to know everything about everything. And I will start from the bottom. I'll scrub toilets and get my way to the top if I need to. But I want to know. And she was just like, I have, a trained embalmer who comes in and I can have him try to teach you where we would do the incisions and things like that. And we'll go from there. And so I went in and it was the first time I ever really met him. And by the end of that, he tells me, you shouldn't really be here. And I asked, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not licensed, but he was just like, no, I meant like women shouldn't be in the prep room. And I was just taken aback. I'm like, at that time was 2018. I was like, it's 2018. Like people still think that way, that women shouldn't be in the prep room. And it was weird because he was in his 50s and he wasn't that much older.
He was young enough to know better.
Exactly. And I
You'd
just
think.
I don't understand, like, and it's funny because we had another trade embalmer that worked in the same funeral home that comes in rarely, but he was well into his 70s, and he was just, praising, like, you're going to do so great in your career. See, I see it. And he was just very accommodating, very nice, very educational. Yeah, very encouraging. So I used to think it was about age, but I think
Hmm.
it's just more how people were taught.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that a lot of these old farts that are so discouraging, um, I think they're insecure because they know that the new people that are entering this field now have more energy, number one, have better control of technology, can relate to families better, and probably do a much better job.
He was definitely not a people person. And,
Maybe he thought that if he taught you that you were going to suddenly start embalming there and he wouldn't have those trade cases.
I never thought of it that way because, the 75-year-old who was well, retired, and he only came in when he could. He has no competition. He
Mm-hmm.
has no reason not to teach me or anything. Where this
Yeah.
person, yeah, and he went behind my back and he talked to my boss, and she went to talk to me later and just like, well, I guess that was a bust. And I was like, oh, okay, so he's not going to teach me anything anymore. She said no, because he doesn't believe women belong there. He's like, and I hate that about these men. What I
Mm-hmm.
loved about my boss at that time, she owned the funeral home. Her and her husband owned it, but she wore the pants in that funeral home. And before her, it was her mother-in-law who owned it, but before her was one of the first women-owned funeral homes in the state, and that's why it was so important to me for me to work there.
You're saying that, and I go back to a funeral home that I did student work at, and it was the same situation. The lady wore the pants. They had inherited it from the mother-in-law, and I was just like, I wonder if we worked at the same place. Well, we can worry about that later.
But I have a point of view, and women can do it just as much as men can
Yeah,
because strong women paved the way.
that we
And
did.
this that's why it was so amazing to work with the boss, my first boss that I had, and we were just so very close that I even got married at the funeral home. When
That's
it was
awesome.
free. Yeah, it was. She was just like, we have a chapel here. We can do it. We can get everybody ordained. You don't have to worry about anything. It was a whole thing. And
Plus, it's
that's what
free marketing for the funeral home.
exactly. And she would always tell me, like, we used the chapel back in the day for weddings. This chapel was used for
Yeah.
so many things. I was the last person to have a wedding at the venue there.
Sounds like he was probably in that Facebook group, the most notorious and disgusting Facebook group that we're aware of called Embalmers Who Care. Mhm.
Oh my gosh, yes. My name was dragged under the mud there that I just left. I was like, I'm never going back to that group. That
Well,
group was
sister,
disgusting.
join the club.
Because I'm just like, embalmers who care, they don't care about each other.
No,
And
no. They drink too much lead and yeah, some stuff is wrong. They've inhaled too much, what is it, cavity fluid?
oh, they don't even turn on their fans in
No,
the embalming room.
no.
They don't wear the respirators.
This is the generation that ate sandwiches and smoked cigarettes.
Drank beer while they were embalming. But I'm like, and you can tell.
They're all the same. All cut from the same cloth. Well, tell us another story.
Well, as much as I loved working there, I figured that I wasn't going to move up anytime soon. After the pandemic, I was burnt out. I was thinking about just leaving for a little bit and then coming back.
Yeah.
My cases went from 5 cases to 25 cases, and I was just
Mm.
burnt out. But that being said, my schooling and my training and everything to be an embalmer was cut. And I was just doing the arrangements, doing the services or so, and I didn't see myself getting out anytime soon. So I talked to my boss, the husband this time, and he was like, you know what, see, if you really want to keep going through this and you want to get licensed and you want to finish, because I see it in your future, you're going to do great. but I think you should go and find that somewhere, because to be honest with you, I don't think you're going to be able to do it here, because you're such a great asset here in the office that we don't want to
Oh,
lose you that way. And at least he was honest about it. I'll give him that.
yeah,
It's like,
he
and
was honest
he was just like,
because,
to be honest,
mm,
we're not going to have you work back there.
oh gosh, what a heartbreak, though. You get your heart set on it and you devote that much time and energy into that family business to have them
Yeah.
pass on you.
And I love them. They taught me everything that I know, and they taught me very, very well. That I was a little sad that that happened, but I guess it was for a reason. I didn't know they were going to get divorced and they were going to sell to, you know,
Ooh,
SCI.
karma.
I know, but it's thankfully he kind of let me know beforehand, trying to tell me to
Yes.
go, but not trying to tell me because he really wanted me to succeed. And so I knew
That's
my
good.
husband was moving out of state, and I was just going to stay there and work there and have him visit us every once in a while. And he sent me a job description on Indeed and said, "Hey, this funeral home is hiring here." And I was just like, "Well, let me just look through it or so." And I seemed to be qualified, but I wasn't licensed because I never
Mhm,
finished school. But
mhm.
I knew all the ropes except for prep room stuff. But I'm like, I'm willing to try. I'm enrolled in mortuary school online. I can do that while I do that on the side. I'll figure it out. But I applied thinking I wasn't going to get it, but they called back and they're like, "You got the job." And I was just surprised because I didn't think I was going to get it. So then I had hardly any money to my name, but I took out a big loan, thousands of dollars,
Oh my
packed all
god.
my stuff in 2 weeks, and I moved states for this job. And I say all that because it's important that I'm also a mother, and I divorced from my first husband, and she used to go back and forth, my daughter. And when I moved, I had to leave her behind because she was in the middle of school, and I was going to see
Yeah,
her in the summer. And that
yeah.
was the first time I was ever really away from her for a while. So me making this move was such a big deal to me. Big sacrifice. I was telling myself, you know what? This is good for my future. I need to get this done. I get here. It was the biggest blizzard, and my little Honda was driving through everything. And it's important because my first day, I was asked to come in. Um, there was just so much snow. There was like 2 feet of snow, and I tried to drive with my Honda, and I was 5 minutes late. And I'm looking around, and everybody there was very nice and accommodating at first. But that soon changed by the second day. The second day, I didn't realize that one of the people there were hired a month before me, and he was actually the one that they were preferred to hire before me, but they already gave me the job, so they didn't tell me that. And so they didn't really know where to put me. And so they were just like, "Well, there is laundry down in the basement if you want to do the laundry." And I said, "Sure." But as a joke, I said, "Oh, okay, so I'm the new cleaning lady." And I laughed, but nobody else seemed to laugh. And I was like, "Oh, okay, never mind. You got to have a sense of humor in this business, don't you?"
Yeah.
But that being said, I was the cleaning lady after that. I cleaned out their whole attic. I went through hundreds of files that were 100 years old.
Mm.
I cleaned all the caskets, polished them. I did all the cleaning stuff, and I maybe assisted in here and there a few services or so, but that's all they used me for.
Were
And
you
I kept,
enrolled at school at that point and they were calling you a student?
yes, exactly
Okay.
that.
Yeah, they made you their bitch.
They did. They really did. And one of them
And
told me, "You're at the bottom of the barrel. You have to work yourself up." And I was like, "Okay."
mhm. And you're willing to do that for a while, but when you see no progress, you see no accolades. I mean, I understand sometimes this is a thankless job, but when you're new, you need encouragement. It's important, for you to feel secure in what you're doing.
Yeah. Or just like know that it's going to go somewhere, not that I'm just wasting my time.
Yeah,
You know,
especially since you moved. You
exactly.
uprooted yourself and you took a chance on something.
I think my biggest pet peeve was that they had these morning meetings every morning. And I thought, I would be a part of that morning meeting, and I never was. And I was just thinking, well, I'm not up to their standards yet. I'm not there yet. Even though it's been like 2 weeks and I haven't picked up a phone, I haven't done anything except clean and maybe assist in a few services and hand out a few cards, and that's it. I kept telling myself, you know what, just go through this. And I helped another sister funeral home that it was an hour away from there. And they're like, you're not part of the meetings. I was just wondering where you were. I was like, I'm not allowed in part of the meetings. And they're like, that's insane. Everyone is in the meetings. Even the cleaning lady is out there. I was like, okay, so I'm not part of this place, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, they did their best to exclude you.
And everything. But, they didn't exclude me when there's stuff to do. And so they always had me cleaning or so. And the only break I had was my hour break to eat. But
at least you got your breaks.
Right? I was trying to tell myself that. Like, at least I had that. But it sucked, getting my bucket and going to clean some toilets, and all 5 of them are just sitting there laughing and having a good time, sharing a Coke, and I'm just not
relaxing.
There. Yeah.
I'm so sorry you went through that.
It's okay. Especially if it was like the very beginning. Like, honestly, if I was hired there first, I would never want to return again. I would be like, the funeral home is not for me.
How do you feel about it now? Do you think you want to go back ever, or is the funeral industry still for you? Or are you thinking on it?
I'm thinking on it, because after that, I was let go because I made a big stink about, am I a cleaning lady or are you going to help me? And I was let go. And I told them it was thousands of dollars down the drain. I moved states away from my daughter for what? And they claimed to be a family-owned funeral home, but they didn't tell me it was like a monopoly kind of funeral home where they own 25 funeral homes around the area.
Yeah, I hate it when they try to pass themselves off as family-owned. You are a corporation at that point.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if the owners are married or not. Same treatment as you would at any other corporation, if not worse.
Exactly. It's worse because if you don't kiss ass, you're nothing to them.
Yeah, there's no HR, there's no backup, there's no support.
Nope. I went to him and said, hey, can you help me? Like, I would, if you need help with anything, please just pull me aside and, let me help you. I would gladly do the folders. I would gladly do the DVDs. I would gladly do anything. I'll even help do makeup. I was really good at doing makeup. And no, he told the boss. And that Monday I was let go. And only for the grounds of I was 5 minutes late to my first day.
Oh, was this within the first, how long did you work there?
I only worked there for a month.
Oh.
And the first thing I did when I left, I went to the other funeral home in town. And I go straight in and I talked to the boss and I said, do you have anything for me? I'll do anything. And I told him the story and he goes, it's funny because that happens all the time there, that they bring people from out of state. It doesn't work out. They let them go in a month and then they come to me and I only have so many slots. I can't hire you right now, but leave your name and number and we'll get back to you when I have a slot. And so I went to a bookstore. I had my free coffee because they saw how sad I was and I cried on the clerk's arm. I was like, my life is over. Like, I worked so hard for what? I did get hired at the new funeral home. It was the start of January of 2023. And that's where I became an office manager. And that's when I got my embalmer's apprenticeship. I got my intern license and I worked my butt off there. But at the very end, I started to see favoritism. I think the one thing I really hated about these 2 funeral homes, the last 2 funeral homes I worked for, was that they always claimed that they were loosey-goosey, that they were very laid back. And we don't have to work as hard as corporate. But the thing is, I worked at a funeral home before that was family owned, but we cared. We cared. We worked together. We tried so hard for our families, and we did everything for each other. So if we knew that someone was sinking, we'd help them. Or here it's just like all men for themselves. And if my boss made an error, I had to fix it and clean it all up. I just kept my head low, and I just wanted to work, and I did what I could. My families were happy with me. That's all I cared about. But why I bring that up is that it was favoritism that really, that's where I had the sour taste in my mouth, where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. How do I say? It doesn't matter how hard I worked and how much I knew, I meant nothing to these people. And I hated that.
There is a lot of good old boy back patting. Beyond that, just blatant favoritism. I mean, you get into these positions where they find out what your specialties are and they just stick you there. So apparently you were doing a really good job at that last facility because they stuck you there. It's like so many of us that just get stuck behind a desk when we're first getting into the field because they think a woman can't lift or we can't do this, that, the other, you know?
Exactly. And that's where I started at the last job I had. I was the office manager because they liked me in the office. And I worked on the side. I was going to mortuary school full time, going to work full time, and getting to make sure that I have my intern license to be an embalmer. And I did that on the side. And my boss pulled me aside and said, see, I can't pay you in that rate. And I said, well, I'm doing it for me, for my future. If you can't pay that, that's fine. But I want to do it for me. And if you can do me the favor and teach me, I'm okay with that. You don't have to pay me more. I just want to do it. And he was just like, okay, we can work with that.
Of course they can. They're not paying you anything extra, and they're getting all that extra talent and labor.
Exactly. He liked me in the office. He liked me talking to the families. I was really good at that. But I was just like, well, I also want to embalm. And it's been 6 years. Dang it. Like, I think I've done my time. I proved myself that I'm really good at this. I think I could be really good back there. And that's what I really wanted to do. And finally, he was just like, okay, well, baby steps. We'll do it baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the middle of that, I think I was only a month and a half in. At 3 a.m, I find myself crying, holding a positive pregnancy test in my hands, because I knew at that time my boss was not going to let me go to the prep room anymore.
Yeah.
And sure enough, a week later, I finally spilled the beans and I said, I'm pregnant. He was just like a little somber, a little upset. But then he was just like, well, you know what? Congratulations. This is a blessing. And he hugged me and all that. And he left the office. It was important because it was the end of the year. And the next year, they were going to get busy and they were going to lose a few staff. And so he was hoping that I would be the embalmer while he's gone. He had all these things, and he started to treat me nicer when I finally got my license on the side without his help or anything. I just did that on my own.
Despite the lack of help.
And when I became pregnant, it's just like everything was thrown out the window. The next day I was treated like crap. The next day I was treated like crap again. It's just, I was no use to them anymore, especially pregnant. And I was just the office person. But it's fun. But what sucked is that they hired someone a week before I found out I was pregnant to take over my spot. And I was teaching her everything about the office.
Of course. Teaching your replacement, right? And you had no idea.
I had no idea until one day I was hearing the girl that was a favorite laughing in the prep room with my boss because they were going to teach her. And I heard that she's my progeny. I'm going to teach her everything I know. She's going to take over this place. I went home. Obviously, I was hormonal. I'm crying. But I sat in my bed thinking, I'm going to be replaced. I'm going to be let go. I know I am. What good am I to these people, especially pregnant? What good am I? They don't even want me to go out in services or anything. And sure enough, the week after their vacation, they made sure to take a vacation beforehand.
Of course.
They said, you know what, it's not going to work out. And I asked on what grounds, and they said on the grounds of you wrote something about the funeral home on your Facebook. But the funny thing about that is it was all shut down. Everything's on private. I only had one coworker on there, and There was no mention about the funeral home. All I wrote was the day where I sat on the bed and I cried my eyes out. All I wrote was like, I worked so hard to get to where I was, and it sucks to see someone else take the spot that I could have had. I'm devastated. That's all I wrote about the funeral home. And I didn't write anything else. And on the grounds that I said that, they fired me.
Not fair.
No. And after that,
other things posted on social media I can understand, but when you're expressing yourself and you don't directly point a finger and you're not a public figure, I think that might be overstepping their bounds.
They were. And then I could tell that they were writing something about me, but they had it shut down because I was an office manager. I can see everything that everyone in the company writes because it comes up when I open Word and things like that. And there was something with my name on it already. It had my name, and I could barely read the words on there, and it had everything supposedly I did wrong. I'm like, well, wasn't I your best friend about a week ago?
Yeah, so you could get them through their vacation, and then they build up a case against you so that you can't, protect yourself with unemployment.
Yeah, and I couldn't get unemployment. And I even though I was pregnant or anything, and especially in the state, they were like, well, you can go apply for a job. I'm like, who's going to hire a pregnant person? Exactly. I was visibly pregnant by the time. I was just screwed. And if I didn't have the friends I had to lean on, I would be homeless. I'm thousands of dollars in debt, away from my family and friends for these 2 jobs. And I should have just stayed. I should have stayed at the funeral home that I was at, worked for CSI. I didn't care. I mean, SCI. I should have just stayed, but I didn't.
CSI. I like that. Oh, goodness.
But I am finishing mortuary school. I am almost done, but I don't see myself returning anytime soon.
Well, something I have kind of embraced lately is for the people that weren't treated right in funeral homes is consider pre-needs. Take that little law class, get a pre-need license, and then you can help people plan their funerals. You're already making those relationships, and then you have an in. You've got relationships built with those funeral homes in the community. They'll want you to come work for them, or you'll get to pick who you go work for. Maybe not where you're at right now. You might have to relocate again, but that's something that's happened before.
Yeah, I was looking into that. I was actually studying for that at my last job.
Man, it's hard. I don't like it.
That's just
I had the anatomy, please.
Exactly. I'm going to finish the nanochemistry here in a bit. I don't know what I got myself into, thinking I can go to school full-time and work full-time while having things on the side.
But that is the expectation in the funeral industry, that you just burn yourself at both ends of the stick.
Yeah, and then also you're on call and removals and this and that. It's like, wow.
There is no healthy work-life balance. I want to close it off on one good thing. Is there something that brought you great pride while you were working in the industry, or something that's very memorable?
There was a few, but there was one, and it was a fetal demise, and I kind of understood what she was going through, but I didn't go through exactly what she went through. But when she came in, we were doing the arrangements for her daughter, because it's her daughter. And I don't know, she was very closed off, very cold, and she just wanted to get everything over with, and totally understandable what she was going through. And we finished the arrangements, she went home, and I just got myself to work, and I just saw that she had a book in her hand, and I was thinking to myself, you know what? I love myself some really cool bookmarks. And even though she didn't ask for any, I started making these bookmarks for her. And I found that there was a footprint of the baby. And I got to work and I scanned the footprint, and I made it pink and I put it in the bookmark, and I wrote this poem that I did. I just tried to make this as personal as I could. And I made it for her. And when she came to pick up the cremated remains and all the stuff. I put the bookmark in there, but I didn't mention anything. And my favorite memory was I got a call 15 minutes later and she was sobbing and saying, "Thank you so much. I haven't been able to cry. I haven't been able to feel anything." Like, I get teary every time I think about it, because it's just, that's why I do what I do. I want to help people in a way that they can grieve the way that they would like to grieve. Not
Yeah,
like they would like, but
empathy, care, compassion.
yeah, I want people who care.
Yep,
Not
you
the
already
embalmers who care.
the embalmers who don't care. I was going to say you exude those characters already just from having this conversation with you. Do you have any advice for people that are coming into the industry, good or bad?
More that, I know it's going to sound crude, but take no shit. You do what you can, work hard, but take no shit. I
Yes.
wish I could have told myself back in the days, just like, stand your ground. And if it means losing your job, to say, that's enough. You don't get to treat me this way. And
Yep,
there's always another job. There's always another thing. And there's always another door to open. And don't just stay in a place where anyone gets to treat you like that. Don't let anyone degrade you.
very good. Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
see, that closes out our interview today. I hope you had a good time despite the negative stuff we had to talk about.
I did. And I'm so sorry if I got like super emotional about this whole thing. I'm still bitter
No.
about it.
Oh, yeah, I'd be bitter too. I am bitter about the stuff I've been through as well. So I'm sure people out there listening are also bitter. So, and this just goes to show all the people that have tried to tell me, "Oh, I have just a great job. This doesn't happen." For for everyone that has a great job, there's one of us that has had a horrible experience, if not once, twice, or three times.
Exactly. If you told me, 3 years ago that it sucks everywhere, I would have been like, no, it doesn't, because I had a great job and I left it for crappy jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I
Yep.
didn't.
Well, your tide will come back